Hello YouTube, hello Facebook, social media. I'm here to do the video where I talk about the Skydive Ultra 200 mile race. And spoiler alert, it was a success. It was really a relatively smooth race. I was really worried because I had previously done the 11 100 mile races and I'd had some rough incidents, some logistical issues that popped up in the 100 mile races previously, so I thought this could be double the logistical issues, but really it wasn't. I would say the most difficult part of the race logistically was leading up to the race, where we packed our car the day of the race. We probably should have packed it the day prior and got a good night's sleep, and the good night's sleep didn't happen. So we have that little kitty cat, Cammy, and she woke us up a few times, so I didn't get a great night's sleep before. And then we had to load up the vehicle, and that was a process of loading a lot of equipment into the car for the whole next 3-4 days of doing the race. And then we head out and we realized that we could not locate a headlamp. And when you're gonna run a race for 72 hours, going through 2 or 3 nights, you're gonna need headlamps and a lot of batteries. So we had to end up making a pit stop at Walmart prior to the race, and they only had 2 headlamps there, and we bought out those 2 headlamps and a bunch of batteries, and that worked out fine. But it was stressful leading up to the race because I kept rummaging through all our stuff trying to locate the headlamps, and I couldn't find them. I had to make that last pit stop. Also, when I get to the race start, the race location, Spaceland Skydive, I get out and I'm wearing flip-flops, get out of the car and step into a red ant pile. Here in Florida, we have those red fire ants that like to bite and give you little sores on your feet. And so I stepped right into one of those fire ant hills and got some nasty bites on my feet. I thought, great, now I'm starting a 200 mile race where I'm gonna have all this friction on my feet and my skin. I'm gonna start with some little welts on my feet. And I did end up getting pretty bad blisters, but I wouldn't really attribute that to the fire ants. Just the race in general, 200 miles. So the race start, there's 8 people signed up for the race. And when I looked at the race footage, it looked like 6 people started, but I thought I saw 7, so one might have started a little late. So the 6 of us lined up, and 3 had jumped out of the airplane and gone skydiving prior. And I did that my first year with the 100 mile race, the 100 mile race 2 years ago. But for the 200 mile race, I was just showing up to focus on the running aspect of the race, the Skydive Ultra. And so the 6 of us line up, and I take off and take an early lead. Sometimes I like to do that. I like to run scared. I like to feel like I'm being chased by my competition. And also, when I'm running with fresh legs, I want to take advantage of that. I don't have cramping already. The race just started. I might as well get some early miles to make some progress and bank some time. So the first loop, I took off, and 5 miles in, I took a little tiny walk break just to like vary it up so I'm not running entirely like in the beginning. I like to add little walk breaks, and that's when Dave Krupski caught up to me. He's the previous year he set the course record at 55 hours. And so him catching up and us running, it was a loop or 2 we ran together. They're 7 mile loops, just FYI. So we ended up running a loop or 2 together and talking, and I'd known him from previous races, and it was cool to catch up with him. But he ended up dropping out. Dave Krupski dropped out. He wasn't feeling mentally into the race, and his daughter had the flu, so he thought, I'm just gonna leave and go take care of my daughter. So that's a fine option to do with your time versus running 200 miles in the sugarcane fields in Clewiston, Florida. So then, as Dave Krupski was starting to not feel so well, then Leone caught up to me, and this was the first time I had really ever heard of Leone. I didn't do a lot of research on my competition, and I wish I would have, because I would have found out what a badass, awesome runner Leone is. And so I ran a loop or 2 with Leone, and as she caught up to me and Dave Krupski, we just did a quick exchange of like, oh, so what races have you done? And she said, oh, I did UMS, Ultra Milan San Remo in Italy. It's a 175 mile race. And so Dave said, oh, that was one of my best races ever. I ran 33 hours. 170 miles in 33 hours is incredible. That's very fast. So that's definitely worthy to say that's one of my best races ever. And then Leone says, Oh, okay, I did it in 32 hours. So like, whoa, okay. Didn't even realize this level of competition was at the race, but that's cool. So then I ended up running 2 loops with Leonie, this incredible runner, living in Tokyo, born and raised in the Netherlands. Hopefully I got that right. And so ran a loop or 2 with her, and at that point I didn't take any walk breaks in that loop or 2 with her, and I just kind of said to her, "Do you like to take walk breaks?" And she said no, she likes to continue running. So I said, okay, so I let her go, and she pulled away. And so then I was in second place, and I'm fine, you know, I'm here to run 200 miles, and it's still early in the race. It wasn't like a heated competition. It's just kind of have to know your own pace and run your own race. So then I ran alone for a while until I made it to 50 miles. And at that point it was 1 in the morning. So I think that was when I took 4 hours of downtime off my feet. Just decided I'm gonna take some time for my body to kind of recover, and because there's still 150 some miles left in this race. And so I took 4 hours of downtime and I slept for 3 hours. It was in our cramped little eco car, so it wasn't great sleep, but I do think it helped. I do think it was strategically smart for me to do that. So then it was around 5 a.m. and I took off running again, and I ran, and then the sun rose, and then the wind picked up. And this became a challenge for the entirety of the daytime period. Something about in the nighttime, the wind died down, but as the sun rose and the day heated up, the wind through Friday and Saturday was wicked. It was, for the loop, we were running into 25 mile per hour sustained wind. And that really puts a damper on your mood mentally and physically, kind of beats you up. Although mentally, I did try to stay positive. Like as I was running and saw my wife at each loop, and she would say like, "How's this wind affecting you mentally?" And I said, "Well, you know, I like to run up hills, and I'm just pretending like when I'm running into the wind, I'm running up a hill." So that's the way I tried to treat it mentally, is running up a hill when I'm going into the wind. But I do think it physically affected me and slowed down my overall time. But that's all right. You know, there's always a challenge in these ultra distance races. So this time it was a sustained 25 mile per hour wind in the daytime. And so from 50 to 100, I ran through that period and made it to 100, which is actually 101.5 miles because the loops don't exactly add up to 100. So at 101.5 miles, I think that might have been where I was mentally near the lowest point, because I had given so much effort. And at this point, normally I would be wrapping up, finishing, or have finished my 100-mile race. And just to only be halfway was just kind of mentally devastating. And the sun was starting to kind of set. And I had already ran through one night and through one day, and then it was this second night. But I did know that I had a pacer coming. So I decided to take this opportunity to take 5 hours of downtime until my pacer got there at 10 p.m. And I took 4 hours of sleep. And in those 4 hours of sleep, I really learned a lot about myself with my ability to rebound. Because when I got up at 10 p.m. and my pacer, Lewis, who I have to give a shout out to Lewis Coco, he's an incredible guy, I got to really know him. But when I got up right there at 101.5 miles after 4 hours of sleep, I felt refreshed and I felt good, and that was a really cool experience to learn that. And so me and Lewis, we didn't know each other prior to this. It was social media, Facebook, where we connected. He said he wanted to come help me, and I said, that's awesome, cool. And so we started running. I started taking off at like 10-minute miles with 101.5 miles on my legs. It was cool to be running at that pace. And so, and we kept the conversation going for probably 12 hours, the 12 hours that he ran with me. And then shout out to Lewis. That's an incredible effort to give, to show up and run with someone for 12 hours just to help them out, to help someone else out in their race. So that's really awesome. A really cool guy. We have a common interest in the national parks. He's been to a lot more national parks than I have, but someday I hope to go to as many as him and hopefully reach them all. And he loves to travel. He's into ultra running only in the past few years. and he's done 2 100-mile races, Daytona and Keys 100, which are both 100-mile races that I've done as well. So we got to talk a lot about that. He's really fond of his family, like a family man, so that was really cool. And 2 little kids, and it was cute. And he's also a Taekwondo instructor, which is really cool to have someone in that other athletic category, just like a endurance sports, like long distance, like ultra running. It's just not really like connected. The skill that you need to run 100 or 200 miles is completely separate from being explosive and kicking and striking. And it's just cool that he has both ends of the spectrum with athleticism. So shout out to Lewis for coming out there and running with me. And in that 101.5 miles to 152 mile point where he ran with me, it felt like one of the coolest athletic achievements of my life, being able to run so solidly after so many miles on my feet. So he ran with me through Friday night and so then he left once the sun started rising and the day started, and then the wind picked up again. And at that point, with 150 miles on my legs, I kind of flirted with the idea of taking some more hours of sleep. I decided it was just too much of a risk. I just wanted to keep going. And also through that night running with Lewis, I had taken the lead in the race, and I was in first place with quite a few miles between me and Leonie. I guess she had taken that night to sleep some. But then so into the day, so the wind picked up a lot, and I just didn't want to risk taking that much downtime because I didn't know how I would rebound if I took some more hours of sleep. So I decided to keep going and keep running into that wind. And this is now Saturday in the day, and this is when all the other runners come out, the 100-mile runners, the marathon runners, the 50-mile runners, the 10K runners. So there's a lot of people out running, and a lot of them have fresh legs. And it was kind of frustrating to be, at this point, running into the wind and struggling, and to have all these people with fresh legs running next to me. And I couldn't really keep pace with them. And I was running alone at this point, and I just felt so dirty. Just the feeling of having, like, with the wind and like just blowing dirt and just covering me. I was like covered in dirt, and it was just gross dirt and sweat. So that was just the feeling I was at that point of the race. So I just kind of slogged through those miles, and I really didn't move great through like 152 miles to 175 miles. Things really didn't go super well, but I just kept moving forward. Took some breaks, ate a lot of food, tried to rebound, and then so I made it through that day, Saturday day, and I had actually bumped into Tammy, who's a runner that I had met in the 2 previous races, Skydive Ultra, in the previous years, and I did some slow miles with her, and she kind of helped me keep going to not have to like take too long of breaks and at least have someone else out there that I could converse with. That was helpful. And then at 175 miles, Chuck and Lindsay came out and ran with me. And Chuck and Lindsay are local runners. There's a local group called Speedsters that I run with and know them from. And they had come out previously and helped me in other races, like the 150-mile race last year. And so it was great to have them back. And at this point, like struggling through the wind, I was mentally kind of low. And so Chuck was really fun. He was making me laugh. He was joking and being humorous. And Lindsay was helpful because I could keep a conversation going and talk about her ultra marathon running experiences. And she had just done her first 100-mile race, and Chuck had just done his first 100-mile race. So it was great to have them come out there and run. They ran 28 miles with me from 175 to 203 because the race, the Skydive Ultra 200 is technically 203 miles. So yeah, those extra 3 miles. Eric Friedman, the race director. So it was when I had 7 miles left. So when I had 14 miles left, it was nighttime. It was the 3rd night that I'd gone through Thursday night of running, Friday night of running, and this was Saturday night. And at that point, I really slowed my pace. And there's this like risk aversion aspect that I have mentally, where when I get really close to the end of a long ultra race, especially like the first time I've done a distance like 100 miles or 150, or now this one, 200 miles, I'm so worried about something happening, like a tendon snapping, that I slow my pace down. And like if you're trying to be like top level competition, you don't want to do that. You want to risk everything and push to the end. But to be honest, the last 14 miles of this race, I really slowed my pace down. And it's just how I wanted to run my race. I wanted to hit 200 miles. I didn't want to risk making 190 miles and a tendon snapping and my race is over. So I did slow down near the end, and Leone ended up catching up to me with 7 miles left. And the fact that I was able to hold her off, and she's such an incredible runner for that long, I'm proud of myself for that. And you know, she's an incredible runner. I'm perfectly fine that she took the lead and won in the last 7 miles, and that's cool. More power to her. That's awesome. So she ended up finishing 58 hours and 23 minutes, and I ended up finishing 58 hours and 53 minutes, or 50 something minutes. So the 200-mile distance, I achieved it. That's pretty cool. I'm happy with that. I really need to say a huge show a lot of appreciation and say a huge thank you to, number one, my wife Autumn. She was a great support crew, filling up my water bottle. She stayed there the entire time, and that really is a huge commitment. And I told her that it was like her PhD earning crew performance. So thank you to Autumn, my wife, for coming out there and helping me fill up my water bottles, give me food, help keep me going mentally and physically out there. And my pacers, Lewis, coming out running all those hours with me and getting to know him. We were complete strangers, and now I feel like we're bonded as friends. It's really cool. And then Tammy, meeting her out there on the course and spending some miles with her. And Chuck and Lindsay coming out and running those last 28 miles with me, keeping me mentally positive into that third night being out there. And huge thank you to all the volunteers of the race that came out and manned the aid stations, and Eric Friedman, the race director, for putting it on, and Mike Melton, the timing guy, who had to stay there the whole time and time it. And my fellow competition, Leone, and all the people that didn't make it too. In fact, so I finished in 58 hours, and Leone finished in earlier 58 hours, and one other woman managed to continue on this race and finish in 70 hours, and just to be out there for that long. Rachel, forget her last name, Rachel Dunai or something, and wow, to be out there for 70 hours and slogging away and get that finish, good for you. And some of the other people that didn't finish, but this guy named Ray he ran 152 miles and didn't finish. Still, wow, what an accomplishment to be out there and pushing for that long. And then Chris Stevens, who ran 170 miles last year and then ran 80 miles this year. Between those 2 years and all that effort, I mean, still good for him to be out there and doing that. Last thing I'll say about this race, I was wondering if the 200-mile finish would help open doors or opportunities to other 200-mile races, and I think it might. I definitely would be open to running 200 miles again in the future. It was a positive overall experience. I mean, I got massive, insane blisters. If you know from Lord of the Rings, the goblin people, they're called orcs. My wife joked and said I had orc feet after the race. I had these massive blisters that were swollen, and it was worth it though. I mean, honestly, I never took my shoes off because I was just worried to look at my feet. And the On running shoes worked out very well for me. I ran 200 miles. They're not even meant for ultras, and I ran 200 miles. And the On Cloud running shoes, and I was afraid to take them off because I knew my feet were blistered, but that's what you get with a 200-mile race. So hopefully I'm not forgetting anything or anyone to shout out, but I guess my mom and Autumn's mom that came out and were helpful too. And so thanks, and like this video, subscribe, ask me questions, comment. Thanks for watching. Bye.